The Lord leads us in very special ways as we do biblical research. And some of those ways are not as well understood as others. And an exhibit at hand would be the material on these DVDs by L.A. Marzulli. L.A., good to have you here.
Great to be here, Gary. Thanks.
Some of the things you do, let's face it, have not been well understood by the church. I think your motives, the type of research you do. L.A. is always on the trail. How did you get started this way?
It really came from Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's book, The Omega Conspiracy.
Yeah.
I was a fairly new Christian, about 10 years into it. It's circa 1990, and I'm perplexed with the Old Testament. I don't understand why the flood of Noah, why the Tower of Babel, why Sodom and Gomorrah gets destroyed, and finally, of course, the conquest of Canaan leaves me like, wait a minute, that's genocide. And I remember going down to the bookstore and asking about, believe it or not, UFOs. Because is there life outside there? And she looked at me, the clerk kind of looked at me odd and brought me down one aisle, and there on this little shelf was The Omega Conspiracy by Dr. I.D.E. Thomas. I went home and I read the book probably in one or two sittings, and then delved into his bibliography, his source material, finally contacted him. He became a mentor, and he set me on the course that I'm on today, literally. The first book, which was published by Zondervan, in 1999, was called Nephilim. And I received my honorary doctorate from Dr. I.D.E. Thomas, who really opened my eyes to this hidden history.
Now, let's just talk for a moment about what happened after that. This is episode 4, American Stonehenge. And Stonehenge, I think, is maybe one of the best known ancient artifacts on the face of the planet. But wait a minute, that's not the whole story. There's another Stonehenge, and another Stonehenge, and another one, and another one. And there are ancient architectural projects that are so huge, and you've documented all of these, or many of them, that modern builders couldn't even duplicate them. The way rocks are machined, the way granite is machined, huge granite blocks, you couldn't do it today with the machinery we've got. And you begin to then fit together a picture which is a biblical picture. There were giants in the earth in those days and also after that. And just that little phrase does it.
What we're looking at, in my opinion, are the fingerprints of the supernatural. There is a hidden history which has been literally obfuscated for the American people and the people of the world. We're on the trail. Our mission statement is to expose the deception of the prince of the power of the air and to herald the return of the King Jesus. And so some of these sites that we go to, like the one America Stonehenge in New Hampshire, it's in New Hampshire. These sites, in fact, all of these sites basically that we cover in the first 5 films of a series are all found in America. Now we show other sites that we've been to, but the sites that we cover, like Mysteries of the Mound Builders, that happens right in Ohio. But the Mound Builders go from the northern part of the United States all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. And we believe, and we show in the film, the absurdity to think that Native Americans built these. They built the smaller ones, yes. They were copying them. But the larger mounds, like Poverty Point, Cahokia, Miamisburg, places like this, we think there's something else that's at play here.
Episodes 1 through 4 of LA's On the Trail of the Nephilim are great. I love them. I've watched them a couple of times a piece. Not being able to do the travels and do the hiking and all the things it requires to track these things down, I love to just sit and watch the DVDs. And bit by bit by bit, you have convinced me that, wait a minute, there's a huge picture here. But it's more than a huge picture. In episode 6, On the Trail of the Nephilim, you have DNA, the final results. But wait a minute, let's go back to 5. Wait, let's go back to 5, because we're not just talking about DNA anymore. We're talking about another race of beings with a special kind of knowledge, which has been, quote unquote, accidentally discovered. And the title of this DVD is Axis Mundi. That is to say, the what?
The center of the world.
Center of the world. How could you have a place called Axis Mundi? Which brings us to a little touristy spot in the Northeast United States, which people, I suppose, have been visiting for a long, long time, and they all say, "Oh, that's very interesting. That's wow. That's kind of yeah. You ought to go up there and visit that place." And people go up and visit. They come back. Their lives are unchanged. L.A. goes up and visits, and his life is changed remarkably.
Yeah, absolutely. What we discovered there, and let me just give you the backstory here real quickly. America's Stonehenge is a site that's found in Salem, New Hampshire. Obviously, that's the United States. So this is where it goes off the rails for me and for a lot of you watching. The site, first of all, they found, we talked about this last time I was on America's Stonehenge, but there was this stone that was discovered with Iberian Punic writing on it. They didn't know it was Iberian Punic writing when they saw it. They only knew that there was writing. We don't know what this is. We can't translate it. It lay in the museum at America's Stonehenge for about 11 years. Entered Professor Barry Fell, who comes in, and this man studies ancient languages. And he looked at that and he says, "That looks familiar. I think I can translate it." Well, he translates it. He has no Nephilim dog in the hunt. In fact, the Stone family who purchased the place, Robert Stone, decades ago purchased it. Then Dennis Stone now is the present curator, and Kelsey is the grandson. So it's 3 generations of Stone. There's no Nephilim dog in the hunt till I show up a couple of years ago. So Dr. Barry Fell goes, "This is Iberian Punic. It says this, to Baal of the Canaanites in dedication." What is that doing in New Hampshire?
Wait a minute, Baal, or Baal, as you call it, it's technically pronounced Baal of the Canaanites. Holy mackerel, that's New Hampshire. What's that doing there?
That has no business being in New Hampshire. And the skeptics will go, "Well, someone forged that, so let's back that up." So let me get this straight. You forge a stone, then you look around and you bury it in one of the chambers, and then cover that with another stone, let that sit there for who knows how long. Then when they finally discover it, no one knows what it means, so it sits for 11 years before Barry Fell discovers it. And no one's getting any money from this. No one really cares. I about fell off my chair. And we show this in the film. I'm following Kelsey Stone with a little Osmo camera. It's all B-roll. And Kelsey's talking about the different artifacts in the museum, and it's really fascinating stuff. And he comes to this display case, and I go, "What's in there?" And he goes, "Oh, these are the stones with the writing on them." I go, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, well, what's this one saying?" And he goes, "Well, this is a dedication stone. It says, to Baal, the Canaanites, in dedication." And you hear this long pause, and we left it in the film. I didn't cut it.
Yeah.
It was a long pause, and I go, "What did you just say?" And he repeats it sort of nervously, and then we go on. And the bottom line is, they didn't know about the Nephilim, the Canaanite connection, all this. But they have all the dominoes are lined up, but they don't quite fall down until Kelsey Stone, the 23-year-old college student, is on Google Earth. And he knows that the site, when Robert Stone, his grandfather, bought it, they discovered these standing stones all around the site. It's a 115-acre site, all right? And in the center of their site, there's a sacrificial table.
You know, if I can interrupt.
Please.
Think about Stonehenge for a minute. And if you were flying in an airplane looking down, what would you see? Well, you would see a structure surrounded by stones, standing. That's what you're talking about.
Exactly.
It's like an early standard.
It's a 4,000-year-old site, according to the carbon dating that they've done on the site. So in the center of that, and this is where they started to understand why did they do this? They would go out in the forest and they would see these standing stones. And so what they did is they cleared the timber and the brush up to the standing stone. And Robert Stone figured, well, maybe this is some sort of solar observatory. Sure enough, that stone, which is about 75 yards away from the center of their site, the summer solstice sunrise comes up. And they all went, wow. And at that point, they started to go to the other stones and clear cut, so you could stand in the center of their site and see. And sure enough, these stones correspond to the equinoxes and to the solstices. At this point, you have to enter Kelsey Stone, who's 23 years old. He's grown up on the site. His grandfather bought it. He had birthdays on the site. He knows it intimately. He's helped clear brush. He knows River Summer Solstice Standing Stone. He's seen it from the time he was like 1 year old and could open his eyes. So he knows all this. And he knows that this whole thing is all connected. But what happens to him next, he's not ready for it, nor is anyone else. And when I saw this, it was on one of the shows, America on Earth, with Scotty Walter. I was on the phone the next day calling the site, asking for an interview, because this just blew me away. Kelsey Stone is on Google Earth, and he knows the center of his site, and he knows where his summer solstice standing stone is, about 75 yards away. So he lines this up on Google Earth with a straight line, and he's a college kid, he's just fooling around. So he extends the line and to see if it goes over his house, which is a few 100 yards away, and it comes pretty close to that. So he's on Google Earth, and he extends the line, and he's over Nova Scotia, and over the Atlantic Ocean, and then over Ireland, and he finds himself in southern England. And at that point, he goes, gee, I wonder how close I am to Stonehenge, England. So he begins to enlarge Google Earth, and he finds it, and the line goes directly through the center trilithon at Stonehenge. A trilithon is the two uprights like this with a lintel across like that. It's not to the right or to the left a couple of yards, it's dead center. Because of the curvature of the earth, there's no way to do this 4,000 years ago. It's advanced trigonometry. You've got to be in the air to understand this. You have to be in the air to triangulate this and do this. And you know, as a pilot, when you plot your course, you've got to allow for the curvature of the earth. So this is incredibly deliberate.
It's called Great Circle Navigation. And by the way, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue, he used Great Circle Navigation.
Have to.
And he was one of the first people who really employed it and kind of knew what he was doing. But here you have Google Earth, which does its own Great Circle Navigation. You just sit there and punch in various locations. And I've watched episode 5 on the Trail of the Nephilim, and I want to tell you, I was excited. I mean, I was leaning toward my computer screen as I was watching this thing. It was, and there are two things I want to get in before we finish today. One is a moment where you are sitting at a table across from someone, and I'll let you describe this. And this individual has an epiphany when he realizes what he's seeing. And he says something that just blew me away. And, I mean, literally, this still raises the hair on the back of my neck when I think about it. Tell us that story.
So we're in what I call the war room with Dennis Stone here at the head of a table, and Fritz Zimmerman and I. So it's Dennis, Fritz, and myself. Fritz and I are facing each other, and Dennis is, across from us that way. And so Dennis Stone is sharing something with us which he's never shared with any other production company that's come on the site. I won't mention their names, but these are all big production companies with big high budgets. You know, we're the little David and Goliath thing here, and we're David. So he's showing us the connectivity on a map between America Stonehenge and Stonehenge, England. We know about that one. But this is where he drops the bomb on us. And we had no idea he was going to do this. And he has this map of the world, and it's flat. Not that the world is flat, the world is a globe. But he's got, for our purposes, he's got a flat map. Here it is, he shows the connection from the Standing Stone to Stonehenge, England. Then he says, well, now that we knew that there was a connection, we began to wonder, what about the equinox stones? What about the sunset stone for the summer solstice? What about the winter solstice? What about all these other stones which correspond to full moons and all this other? So they started plotting things. And we're sitting there, and Dennis Stone goes, we went out to this particular standing stone and one on Google Earth. They have no dog in the hunt. he has no idea where this Google Earth line is going to take him. He's only in the center of his site. Here's the standing stone, and he goes on Google Earth, and he draws that line, and he winds up in Chaco Canyon, New Mexico. And it's the center of his site.
And Chaco Canyon is?
In my opinion, it's a Nephilim site, in my opinion. He goes out to another standing stone, and he winds up in Teotihuacan, Mexico, at the Pyramid of the Moon. He draws another one to another standing stone, and he winds up in Machu Picchu, Peru. Another one, and he winds up to the step pyramids on the Canary Islands, and then finally over to Stonehenge, England. Recently, he sent me one that they just completed, and this one just blew me away. The standing stone, I think it's the August 1st moonrise, corresponds to the Great Pyramid of Egypt. And that line goes right through the top of the pyramid, right at the top of the pyramid. So Fritz Zimmerman sees this, and Fritz just, his jaw drops, and he goes, oh my gosh, this is the Axis Mundi, the center of the world. There is a connectivity here, folks. We're not making this up. You can go on Google Earth for yourself, knowing where these standing stones are, and understand that these standing stones were put there thousands of years ago. And what is astonishing to me about this information lay hidden, completely hidden away, locked. You want to talk about a lockbox with a chain and just completely, no one would ever know this until Google Earth and Kelsey Stone. And what we're revealing here is the machinations of the enemy, of the fallen cherub, of Lucifer.
And
Satan.
it fits the story of the Nephilim to a T.
To a T.
And by the way, isn't it interesting the Stone family would have purchased this location?
I know, it's hard to believe, but there it is.
Friends, this is only the bare beginning of the story, and it has a biblical connection that is amazing. In other words, we have the Axis Mundi, and the next DVD plays right into this story. We won't have time to do it on this program, but on the next, we will. The Axis Mundi, that is center of the world, is the product of the thinking of another species of beings who were cursed by God for their what should I say, massive encroachment on planet Earth and God's plan for humanity. And their story has been told for centuries. For example, if I open my copy here of Josephus, Josephus says many angels came down and accompanied with women and begot sons that proved to be unjust. And he says these are the ones that the Greeks call giants. We call them Nephilim. The Greeks called them Titans. Noah was very uneasy at what they were doing. And of course, you know the story. He began to build an escape vessel with God's instruction. And you say to yourself, how does all this fit together? And we're going to talk about that right after we come back, because I would like to tell you how you can get your copy of the Nephilim series. And all of these go together to tell the story of an interloper species of beings that tried to take over planet Earth. And this is a very, very central part of the story of God's plan of salvation for mankind.
The 6th chapter of Genesis includes one of the most controversial passages in Scripture. We're told that a group of fallen angels left their home in heaven, came to earth, took human women as wives, and created a race of half-human, half-angelic hybrids, polluting the bloodline of mankind. Sometime later, Noah's flood would destroy the ancient world, and God would start over with Noah and his family. This is where the story of the Nephilim continues. LA began to track their footsteps from the Promised Land to Peru, Malta, France, Sardinia, and finally to the shores of America. Nephilim architecture can be found all over the world, defying modern building techniques and leaving behind ancient megalithic structures that leave archaeologists bewildered. Who constructed these landmarks? LA believes it was these fallen angels who fled the Promised Land and sailed to America. As you've heard, these sites are all mathematically connected to places like Stonehenge, England, and Jerusalem. It's not an accident. Whoever constructed these structures had advanced knowledge of trigonometry, geometry, and astronomical alignments in the heavens. LA's latest DVD, Access Mundi, The Center of the World, is available for a gift of $20. And as always, every order placed with Prophecy Watchers comes with a surprise bonus. We also have a special bonus offer, the Mysteries of the Mound Builder package. This lets you start right at the very beginning of LA's investigative journeys. When you purchase the first 4 DVDs in the On the Trail of the Nephilim series for a gift of $80, we're going to send you the 5th and latest DVD, Access Mundi, as a free bonus. These 5 DVDs will take you places where you will see things you will simply not believe. When you give to Prophecy Watchers, you not only receive these valuable resources, you're helping support and further our mission and purpose to educate others of the dark and mysterious corners of Scripture that shed new light on God's amazing Word. We look forward to hearing from you soon. Call us at the toll-free number on the screen or go to our online bookstore at prophecywatchers.tv to support this relevant and vital work. Remember, everything that we're doing at Prophecy Watchers is made possible with your support, so stand with us today.
Well, I hope you'll take advantage of that offer, because you'll be amazed. And let's continue with the episode 5, Access Mundi. We've gone through the story all the way to Fritz exclaiming, and by the way, he was moved.
Absolutely.
He was emotional.
Blown away.
And you'll see this on this particular DVD. And I'm looking at it, and pardon me for losing my way, but I'm kind of taken by this story to the point that it's hard for me to talk. It's exciting. But let's go to the next part of it. And I'm going to ask you a question. What does all of this mean to Christians? And I'm talking about Bible believing, church attending, Sunday school attending, Christians who contribute to the Christian walk and the Christian life in their communities. What does this DVD have to do with the Christian walk as we know it? Or is it just some weird, scary story that L.A. Marzulli made up out there? Or if he didn't make it up, hey, what's it worth? I think there's something in here that people should know, Christians should know.
There is, Gary, and the bottom line is this: there is a supernatural world that really has been hidden from us. And especially in the West, we kind of dumb it down, we don't really look at it, and it's just, we have a form of religion in many churches but deny its power. What being on the trail shows us is that the enemy is not only manifesting on this planet, he's creating, constructing these sites. And it's global. It's absolutely global. And there was connections to all these other sites on the planet. That's what we show. There's a connectivity. These are the fingerprints of a supernatural. This is Satan's handiwork manifest on the planet. And it shows us that we are at war. We are in an ongoing war with our adversary. And I believe it's coming to a close, as I know you do.
And the present chapter of it is completely described in the New Testament. And I'm just looking at the one we all know about, Ephesians 6:12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. So those would be the top echelon of the interlopers. And against powers, these would be the ones who follow their orders, and against the rulers of darkness of this world, and believe me, they're out there. Every time somebody makes a call to the local sheriff saying, I'm seeing a UFO, he's talking about principalities. And believe me, they're flying around, and they're appearing more often. The question among Christians now is, what does a UFO study have to do with the church? It has to do with awareness, and that's what LA's ministry is. I'm absolutely convinced. Christians need to be aware of the fact that there's another species out there that has absolutely pledged to destroy mankind, if at all possible. The fight's still going on. And these are called the rulers of darkness of this world against spiritual wickedness in heavenly places. And I think that is an interdimensional reference. A high place is leaping over into a dimension just above ours where they cannot be easily seen. This is current. It is happening. It's quickening. And LA, I think, has been given a real challenge by the Lord, who has said, get out there on the trail, put this together so that it makes a story that Christians can really understand.
If you had told me 40 years ago, when I first became a born-again, spirit-filled Christian, that I would be doing this, I would probably run out of the room screaming. I had no interest in making films. I had really no interest in archaeology like this. And now what we're doing is exposing the deception. Folks, I can't stress it enough, these are the fingerprints of the dragon. And one other thing we should talk about this real quick, that when you line this site up, and this, again, Dennis Stoner, we're in the upper room, Dennis shows us, oh, by the way, the entire site originally, 4,000 years ago when it was constructed, lined up to the constellation Draco. And I go, Draco, the dragon. So this is all deliberate. It always goes back to the dragon. Everything goes back to the dragon. It goes back to Baal of the Canaanites. It goes back to the sacrificial altar. It connects all these points on a global level. These are the fingerprints of the dragon.
And about 120 years ago, men were actually studying the star patterns as designated by the ancients. And by the way, there's a great precedent for studying star patterns in the Bible. Don't have time to go into it, but why the star patterns? Why Draco, the dragon? And that's because the Lord has written, if you will, a witness to his history in the stars.
Absolutely.
And not only what has happened, but what's going to happen. And Draco is a prominent feature of all of these things. There really is, by the way, a real devil, and he really does have real followers who are able to vault through the heavens in ways that we humans just can't accomplish, because they were in the past a superior species. That's another story. By the way, we're going to do another program with LA and extend this story a bit. Anything you'd like to say on the way out?
Just that the supernatural world is real. They were here, they're here now, they're back on a different way. All these points are connected, and you can't do that in antiquity. It's impossible, absolutely impossible.
Amen. Wish we had more time. L.A. Marzulli, always on the trail. I'm Gary Stearman. You keep watching. We are. Thanks for joining us on Prophecy Watchers. You can find us on the web at prophecywatchers.com, where you can sign up for our free email newsletter, or follow us at facebook.com/prophecywatchers. In the meantime, keep watching, everybody, and we'll see you soon.